Hi everyone. In this video we want to tell you something about the market for mates, and we is a social psychologist and an economist.
I am the social psychologist of the two. My name is Dreezens and I teach a lot of courses in the liberal arts and sciences curriculum.
I am an economist by training, and I teach courses in the business and economics major as well as in the first year.
So let's dive into this market for mates.
Economics is the study of the economy, and it involves terms like gross domestic product, interest rates, inflation, things that many people find boring. But what economics also is a toolbox that allows you to study any decision that is made under conditions of scarcity and uncertainty. And anything you buy is limited. So any buying decision, whether it is a piece of pie, education, or a romantic partner in the end, is such a decision. When you buy a piece of pie, you don't really know what you get. You don't really know your taste either. When you buy education, you're looking for programs. You don't really know what specifically each program will do for you. And there's a limited number of programs that you can take at one point in time. So there is uncertainty, you don't know what's going to happen, and there's scarcity, you don't know you can't have it all. And also for romantic partners, that's the same thing. There's scarcity, you cannot mate everyone that you might, at least before buying someone else, might want to mate. And there's uncertainty, you don't really know what a loving relationship with a particular partner will look like. So a market, first, a market is a place where buyers and sellers come together to exchange goods. And that may sound a bit odd in the context of love relationships, as what you exchange on that market is yourself. So it is the product that gets exchanged is, rather than in the market for pies where you buy something outside yourself, is your own person. But if you think about the market for labor, for example, where when looking for a job, you also sell your time, there are parallels to these with this market. In this market, everyone brings an economist would say, vector of characteristics. So there are things that you have, characteristics that you have, that others will or will not appreciate in you. And in partners, you bring status, money, income, wealth, attractiveness, certain personality characteristics. So there's a long list of factors that you bring to this market.
But Gerwin, many of these things you cannot know beforehand, right?
So you can know somebody's status, for instance, but whether they are loyal or kind, you don't really know that beforehand. So how does that work?
That is uncertainty. So indeed, when you engage in this market, there's uncertainty involved, and that you need to take that into account. And there's also complexity involved here. Some of the features that you appreciate may depend on other features that you appreciate as well. For example, you may be fond of green eyes, but only in people with brown hair, and else you might prefer blue eyes. So some of these characteristics, they go hand in hand. If one is there, the other is even more valuable. Others are substitutes, and you would like to have one or the other. And yet others depend on the presence of other characteristics as well. So this is a very complex product, if you wish, to assess. But that also is not uncommon. And then there's, as in any other market, there's a matching principle. So each guy would buy, to the extent, but that's a bit odd terminology, but let's use the economic terminology anyway. Each guy would buy the girl that he ranks highest, who is willing to be bought by him.
Okay, but wait. Now I want to step in because from a psychological and an evolutionary perspective, I would say that this might not always be true.
So wait a minute, because I want to say something about sexual selection, and that is an evolutionary theory that is within psychology. And sexual selection actually says, so the basic idea is that the sex that has the most to lose in terms of time and effort and health by getting offspring, by producing children, becomes selective.
So the other sex that has the least to lose has to go to great lengths to stand out. And I'll show you a couple of examples from the animal kingdom. So the sex that has the least to lose has to show on the outset that they are fit, that they are adapted to the environment. And I'm showing a picture of a peacock here because the peacock is one of the best examples of sexual selection. You all probably know that peacock males have very big tails and they shake their tails in order to attract females. So when you think about a peacock, you think about his tail. What you don't think about necessarily is that peacocks sleep in trees. They usually sit on the lower branches of trees, and that peacocks are also prey animals. So they are being eaten by, let's say, foxes or wolves. And you can imagine if you sit on a low branch in a tree and you have a very long tail, a fox only has to do this in order to get you out. So this tail, which helps the males to get a female, actually is also a disadvantage in their survival. So it's really hard to actually have a tail like that. It reduces your chances of survival, and that is exactly why the women are then more interested in you.
So strangely enough, sexual selection says you have to kind of reduce your chances of survival in order to show that you are still there, and therefore you are a very viable mating partner, so to say.
And the sex that has the least to lose has to show that they are fit. In seahorses, it is actually the males that have the most to lose in reproduction because they carry the eggs for, I think, a number of weeks, maybe even. But also other birds and other species, wattled jacanas, for instance, there it's also the male bird that actually takes care of the kids. And that means that in seahorses and in wattled jacanas, it's actually the female that has to stand out. In humans, it turns out that it's the woman that has the most to lose in reproduction, right? So it's women that carry a baby for 9 months and that have to, at least in evolutionary times, feed a baby for about 2 years. So you lose 3 years of your life in order to raise a child. So it is the man that has to stand out. And we also see that, you know, in the whole term alpha males that kind of collect prestige and status and money or physical fitness. These are all ways to stand out as a human being.
Another parallel between the market for love and other markets that we know about, in particular, I would say the housing market, is that people tend to buy only one product. If houses turn out to be very expensive, people rarely choose to live under the bridge. Say, no, this product is too expensive for me. I just won't have it. As you may say, well, there's no pies are expensive this year. I'd rather go for cake. That's not happening. Each individual wants to have a house, or at least wants to live in a house. Similarly, in the market for love, you wouldn't say that the price of so what you have to do, what you have to give up in order to be able to mate is so high that we just forget about wanting to find a partner at all. You may not succeed, but the desire will still be there. Conversely, if the price would turn out to be very low, then people rarely buy two houses to live in, at least. As an investment object, that may be a different matter again. But to live in, one generally sees that everyone has one house and no more than one. Similarly, if you turn out to be very successful in attracting partners, you tend not to build a herd. You prefer to stick to one partner only.
Well, you say that usually people don't want more than one partner, but that is also different in different societies. So there is societies where one man can have multiple women, and we call that polygynous societies. And these are about 1/3 of all the countries in the world actually, maybe not legally, but at least culturally allow polygamy to be okay. But there's also something which is called polyandry, where one woman has multiple men.
And this is a little bit less going on right now, but even historically, there's at least 50 societies that were known where actually women were allowed to have multiple men. So there is actually societies where it's okay to have more than one mate.
And let's look at the example of polygyny, which is where one guy has several women. There's kind of good reasons for that, at least from an evolutionary perspective. So when you think of it, the female reproductive success is limited by available sources such as food, which means that a woman cannot just have 3 or 4 or 5 babies in the same period of time, because her body won't allow her to do that, but also there might not be enough food in order to take care of all these babies.
Her
However,
productive
men,
capacity is limited to one.
exactly.
Yeah.
Productive capacity is limited to one, or if you have twins, it's two, or maybe if you have triplets, it's three, but that's kind of it, right? That it's not doable to do more than three. It's not wise, I would say.
However, for a man, the only limit to his reproductive success is the number of females that he can find that want to mate with him, right? So you as a guy, Gerwin, you could, if I'm kind of making a baby in my 9 months, you could, what would be the limit? Maybe tens of thousands if you were very fertile, right? So for you, the limit would be completely different, and the limit would only be there because you need females to inseminate, so to say.
From that perspective, polygyny, where you have one man and multiple women, seems more logical, because then as a society or as a sort, you can produce more children, which is good for your survival in general. When we look at the other way around, one woman with more men, polyandry, there's also benefits to that.
If you have one woman that has multiple men and the child that the woman has could be from each of these men, then you have a reduced risk of infanticide. So the female may kind of hide the paternity of her offspring, so the man never knows for sure whether this is his child or not. And what you see mostly in the animal kingdom, but also sometimes in humans, is that men kill the babies that are not there, so that they will have more food and resources available for their children.
But also this results in a more genetically diverse set of offspring for a woman. So that means that the chances that one or more of these offspring are actually well adapted to the environment and therefore survive are bigger when their genes are more diverse than when you only have children with one man. So there's also advantages in the polyandry situation. Strangely enough, given these examples, we as Western culture don't really like the idea of having more than two people in a relationship. So we find it strange or stupid or immoral. And the reason is, why is that? Because there's these other situations in which this is okay. And the answer actually is culture. So culture helps us to determine what we find logical and normal. Culture, a definition would be, is a large and diverse set of aspects of social life. So culture in many different ways tells us how to live our lives and what the rules are. So culture is kind of a way to help us understand what we think is good or bad. And again, one last short example. This is the Inuit, people who live on Greenland, for instance. And they're in this very harsh environment where it's really hard to stay alive as it is already, right? Because there's not a lot of food. Any excess children might be killed, which means that if you get too many children and you cannot provide for them, there's not enough food for them, they might actually kill these children early on. And female children are more likely to be killed than male children because in general, female do less of the hard work or are able to do less of the hard work than male children. So male children in this situation seem to be more useful to them.
Which results in a skewed sex ratio. So there's many more men than females because the female children are likely to be killed. However, in this society where you have to really live together in order to stay alive, and there's many norms about sharing and about making sure that everybody in the community is being protected, so to say.
Men cannot just snatch a woman and take the woman for their own because there's more men than women. So they have to share a woman or they have to go without any women. There's no single men with single women because of this norm of sharing. So in the Inuit situation, it's very logical to have one man with multiple women. In the Western culture, where we have plenty of food, we don't kill our excess offspring. We don't have to.
So women can afford to have only one mate. There's not too many men. There's an equal amount of men and women. So there, it is okay to have only one mate.
And
guys don't have to share.
Guys don't have to share, exactly, because there's enough women for every guy. And then our culture makes us feel like, okay, this is the right way to do it. But this culture is based on how it works for you in evolutionary terms. And evolutionary terms is always about survival given the environment that you are in.
So the question that we could then ask is what polygamy then does to supply and demand. If a quarter of the men would each have 3 women, then a quarter of the women would be left just as 3/4 of the men. So if we would allow some men to have more women, then the remaining men will have way fewer women. Nature will not suddenly produce more female babies. So the number of women and men at birth will still be roughly 50-50. So if the quarter of the men that has more women in a polygamous setting, they have to account for the possibility that some of these women will run off. So they will seek other herds to join, perhaps, or they go for one of the guys who's looking for one girl only. So in a polygamous section of this hypothetical society, the men will have to do more work to keep the spouses that they have, and perhaps to attract a few more.
And what about the monogamous situation then?
Their competition is fiercer. So if you have if 1/3 of the if a quarter of the men has 3 women each, then 3/4 of men are left with 1/4 of the women only. So the 3/4 of men that are left, who then apparently prefer monogamy, they have way fewer women to choose from. But that would be a one-on-one match originally, but some chose to join a bigger group, so they're no longer available. So you get a skewed sex ratio again in society, just as with the Inuit, but now not because excess girls are killed before they grow older, but because some girls choose to be in a one-to-many relationship. The perhaps counterintuitive conclusion is that the men, the group who is allowed to have more partners, which one could think, well, that's good, right? You can share. You have the right to mate as many people as you want. They actually suffer the most in the end, because they have to engage in most efforts to maintain or build these relationships.
All right, good to know.
So that leads to some take-home messages. If we would have presented this in class, you could actually have taken them home. Now you are already home, but still they're take-home messages. The second, to start with that one, is the immediate result of the preceding point. So if you are unhappy with the effort level of your partner, then what you could do is to ask your partner to have additional partners next to you in their group, in their herd, so to speak, because then the risk that you would run off is bigger. So competition within the group increases. You would have to go to greater lengths to look after you, just as after the other women. So if you're unhappy in your romantic relationship, one solution could be to ask your partner to invite to start dating more people next to you.
Sounds counterintuitive
Yes.
to us, but that's our culture speaking.
Yeah, and perhaps it also shows the limits of economic modeling. I'm not sure whether you should really practice the implication of this model, and also what it shows. If you're a guy, take it easy. You said that the guys are the ones who should go, according to your sexual selection argument, to great lengths to conquer a woman. And in that sense, this is a rat race among men. You go to great length, and you increasingly go to greater lengths to stand out against your composition, which has a similar pressure to outperform what he did in the past.
Yes. All right.
So
that settles, I think, our lecture about the market for mates.
We hope you enjoyed watching this. This is a team taught lecture, which is kind of typical for liberal arts and sciences. So we do this a lot of the time. We put two perspectives next to each other in order to make it more fun to watch, and in order to make you understand these two perspectives.
Any last things you want to add, Gerwin?
No, I don't. I'm off to my romantic partner, I think.
Well, good luck and have fun.